A millionaire hardened by numbers and contracts decides to carry out an eviction personally. Upon invading the house, he finds a girl protecting a baby. There on the moldy floor of that house, a truth destroys and reconstructs him. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. Maxwell Thornton adjusted his Italian silk tie in the rearview mirror of his Bentley Continental. At 54, his salt and pepper hair and sharp features had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, but today, the creases around his eyes deepened with irritation. 6 months of unpaid rent from Unit 4B in the Westwood Apartments was testing his patience. The property, one of hundreds in his vast New York real estate empire, shouldn't even be on his radar. But something about this particular case had gotten under his skin. "Sir, I can have Johnson handle this eviction," said Robert, his assistant, from the passenger seat. "It's in the Bronx. Not exactly where you typically—" "I'm going myself." Maxwell cut him off, shifting the car into drive. "Sometimes you need to send a message, make an example." His voice carried the weight of decades making ruthless business decisions. Westridge Development doesn't succeed by letting people take advantage of us. Robert knew better than to argue. For 20 years he'd watched Maxwell build Westridge from a small real estate office into a billion-dollar enterprise that dominated Manhattan's skyline. The man was not accustomed to being told no. As they drove from the gleaming high-rise office in Midtown toward the Bronx, Maxwell's mind drifted to the numbers. His quarterly projections were off by 0.8%, an unacceptable margin. While one delinquent tenant wouldn't make a difference to the bottom line, the principle mattered. In Maxwell's world, contracts were sacred, and rules existed for a reason. "Have we tried contacting the tenant again?" Maxwell asked, weaving through traffic with practiced precision. "Multiple times, sir. Our letters come back unopened. Phone. Calls go to voicemail. The property manager reported lights on at night, so someone's definitely living there." Maxwell nodded, jaw tightening. "And we've followed all legal procedures?" "To the letter. Final eviction notice was delivered 30 days ago. We're well within our rights to remove the occupants and change the locks." The Bentley seemed increasingly out of place as they drove deeper into the Bronx. Maxwell rarely ventured to this part of his real estate portfolio. The buildings here were functional investments, not prestigious showcases like his Manhattan properties. They passed bodega storefronts with colorful awnings, laundromats with handwritten signs, and corner stores advertising lottery tickets and cheap beer. The Westwood Apartments stood on a corner, a nondescript 5-story brick building with fire escapes zigzagging across the facade. Nothing like the gleaming glass towers that had made Maxwell his fortune, but the building turned a reliable profit, usually. "Wait here," Maxwell told Robert as he parked. "Sir, I should really accompany you. For security." "I said wait here." Maxwell's tone left no room for discussion. He grabbed the leather portfolio containing the eviction papers and stepped out of the car. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and old carpet. A flickering fluorescent light cast an unflattering glow over peeling wallpaper. Maxwell made a mental note to have the property manager address the maintenance issues. Appearances mattered, even in his lower-end properties. He took the stairs to the 4th floor, unwilling to trust the aging elevator. Each step heightened his resolve. This was about principle, about maintaining standards. The tenant in 4B, one Sarah Carter according to the lease, had broken their agreement, and now there were consequences. The hallway was quiet when he reached the 4th floor. Maxwell straightened his Armani suit jacket before approaching Unit 4B. He knocked firmly 3 times. Silence. He knocked again, louder. "Ms. Carter, this is Maxwell Thornton, owner of Westridge Development. We need to discuss your tenancy." Still nothing. Maxwell's patience thinned. He retrieved the master key from his pocket, a privilege of ownership he rarely exercised, but kept available for situations precisely like this. The lock turned with a click. Maxwell pushed the door open, steeling himself for confrontation. "Ms. Carter, I'm entering the premises as legally permitted under—" The words died in his throat. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished. A folding table held a few canned goods and a half-empty box of cereal. The walls needed paint, and the carpet was worn thin in paths from the door to the kitchenette, and the single bedroom visible through a partially open door. But it was clean, surprisingly so, with everything arranged with careful precision. Rustling sound came from the bedroom. Maxwell stepped further inside, his expensive shoes sinking into the threadbare carpet. "Hello, Ms. Carter?" A small figure appeared in the bedroom doorway. Not the tenant he expected, but a girl, 8, maybe 9 years old. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her clothes, while clean, showed signs of repeated wear. Most striking were her eyes, large blue and possessing a wariness beyond her years. "Miss Carter isn't here," the girl said, her voice steady despite the obvious size difference between them. "Who are you?" Maxwell found himself momentarily speechless. Where was the tenant? Why was a child here alone? His business mind quickly recalculated the situation. "I'm Mr. Thornton. I own this building." He tried to soften his tone. "Where is Miss Carter, your mother?" The girl's posture stiffened, shoulders squaring as if preparing for battle. "She's not here anymore." A muffled whimper came from behind her. The girl glanced back toward the bedroom, indecision flickering across her face. "Is someone else here?" Maxwell asked, taking a step forward. The girl moved to block his path, her small frame insignificant, yet somehow immovable. "My brother. He's sick." Maxwell frowned. This wasn't how evictions were supposed to go. There should be angry adults, perhaps tears and pleading, but ultimately business was business, not children alone in an apartment with unpaid rent. "Your parents' guardian? There must be an adult responsible for you." The girl's eyes flashed with something, pride perhaps, or determination. "I take care of us now, since Mum went to heaven. It's been hard to pay the rent, but I'm saving money. I have $43 so far." She gestured toward a small jar on the kitchen counter, filled with crumpled bills and coins. The whimpering from the bedroom grew louder, developing into a full cry. The girl's resolve wavered, torn between guarding the door and tending to the sound. "I need to check on him," she said finally. "He has a fever." Maxwell nodded, his eviction speech forgotten. The girl disappeared into the bedroom, and after a moment's hesitation, Maxwell followed. The bedroom contained a mattress on the floor, covered with clean but worn sheets. In the center lay a toddler, perhaps 18 months old, his face flushed, with fever. The girl knelt beside him, placing a cool cloth on his forehead with practiced movements. "How long has he been sick?" Maxwell asked, hovering in the doorway. 3 days. I've been giving him children's Tylenol and trying to make him drink water." She stroked the boy's hair with gentle fingers. "He usually likes applesauce, but he won't eat much now." Maxwell stepped closer, drawn by the child's discomfort. The boy's eyes fluttered open, clear blue eyes unnervingly familiar, and fixed on Maxwell. Something inside him shifted. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. The toddler clutched a small object in his tiny fist. As he moved restlessly in fever, his hand opened, revealing a pocket watch, gold, antique, with distinctive engravings on the case. Maxwell's world tilted on its axis. That watch had been his father's and his grandfather's before that. He'd given it to his son, Jason, on his 16th birthday, just months before their relationship had shattered in a storm of harsh words and impossible expectations. Before Jason had walked out, declaring he'd rather live on the streets than under Maxwell's roof. The boy on the mattress wasn't just any sick child. Those familiar blue eyes, the watch. This was his grandson, which meant, "What's your brother's name?" Maxwell asked, his voice barely audible. The girl studied him with suspicion before answering. "Michael, but I call him Mikey." Michael. The name Jason and his girlfriend had chosen before disappearing from Maxwell's life. The grandson he hadn't known existed. "And your name?" he managed to ask, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Emily," she replied. Emily Carter. Carter, the same as the tenant on the lease, not his son's girlfriend's name, which meant, "Where is Jason?" he asked, forgetting the girl wouldn't know his son by that name. "Mikey's father?" Emily's face clouded. I don't know his real name. Mom just called him Jay. She looked down at the feverish toddler. He left before Mikey was born. Mom said he was from a rich family that didn't want him seeing her. She met him at the diner where she worked. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Jason had disappeared 9 months before this child would have been born. He'd been seeing a waitress, something Maxwell had discovered and forbade, leading to their final argument. And now, instead of evicting a delinquent tenant, Maxwell was standing in a barren apartment where his grandson lay ill, cared for by a child with no relation to him at all. The eviction papers in his hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Maxwell sank to his knees beside the mattress, the polished leather of his Italian shoes creasing as they met the worn carpet. His eyes never left the pocket watch in Mikey's small hand. The world around him seemed to fade, leaving only this moment, this revelation. "Are you okay, mister?" Emily's voice cut through his shock. She remained protectively, positioned between him and the toddler, her young face a mixture of wariness and concern. "This watch," Maxwell said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did he get it?" Emily glanced at the golden timepiece. It was his dad's. Mom said it was the only thing he left behind. Mikey won't sleep without it. Maxwell reached out with trembling fingers, but stopped short of touching the boy. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, Emily nodded, though her eyes remained vigilant. Gently, Maxwell placed his palm against Mikey's forehead. The skin burned. With fever, but the touch connected him to something he'd thought lost forever. Family. His grandson. Jason's son. "He needs a doctor," Maxwell said, a new urgency in his voice. Emily's posture stiffened. "We don't have insurance or money for doctors." "I do." Maxwell stood, decision made. "I'm taking you both to my personal physician, right now." Emily moved protectively closer to Mikey. "We're not going anywhere with a stranger." "I'm not," Maxwell began, then stopped. He was a stranger to these children. Despite the blood connection to one of them, he had no right to their trust. He needed to earn it. He took a deep breath and knelt again, bringing himself to Emily's eye level. "My name is Maxwell Thornton. I own this building, yes, but that's not important right now. What's important is that Mikey needs medical attention." He gestured to the pocket watch. "That watch belonged to my father. I gave it to my son Jason before he left home." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "You're saying you're Mikey's grandfather?" Maxwell nodded, his throat tight. "I believe so. I didn't know he existed until right now. I didn't know about you either." The girl's sharp gaze assessed him, weighing his words, searching for deception. She had clearly learned to be cautious beyond her years. "Prove it," she said finally. Maxwell reached into his jacket pocket and removed his wallet. From behind his credit cards, he extracted a small photograph. Jason at 16, standing beside Maxwell on a fishing trip, one of the few happy memories from his son's teenage years. He handed it to Emily. She studied the image, then looked back at Mikey, comparing features. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same blue eyes, the same jawline beginning to form even in Mikey's baby face. "He does look like Mikey," she admitted reluctantly. "But that doesn't mean I should trust you." A weak cry from Mikey drew her attention back to the mattress. The toddler's fever was clearly worsening, his small body shivering despite the room's warmth. Maxwell saw indecision cross Emily's face, the impossible choice between protecting her brother from a stranger and getting him the help he desperately needed. "Emily," Maxwell said softly, "I understand your caution. It's kept both of you safe. But right now, Mikey needs more than what we can provide here. My driver is downstairs with my car. We can have him at my doctor's office in 30 minutes, please." The sincerity in his voice must have reached her, because Emily's shoulders slumped slightly. "If anything happens to him, I promise you I only want to help." She nodded once, decision made. "I need to pack his things. And mine." "Of course." Emily moved with efficient precision, gathering a small backpack of essentials, a change of clothes for each of them, a worn teddy bear for Mikey, the medicine bottle and a notebook filled with careful calculations in a child's handwriting. Maxwell noticed these weren't typical childhood drawings, but meticulous records of expenses: rent, food, medicine, with small additions and subtractions calculating their remaining funds. While she packed, Maxwell stepped into the hallway and called Robert. "I need you to come upstairs. Apartment 4B, and call Dr. Winters. Tell him we're coming immediately, medical emergency." "Sir, what's happening?" Robert's confusion was evident. "Just do it, Robert, now." Maxwell ended the call, his mind racing ahead. The children would need proper accommodations, care, legal considerations. Emily emerged from the bedroom carrying both the backpack and Mikey, wrapped in a thin blanket. The toddler's head rested against her shoulder, his small body radiating heat. "Let me carry him," Maxwell offered. Emily hesitated, then shook her head. "He gets scared with strangers." A knock at the door announced Robert's arrival. The assistant's eyes widened at the scene before him, his immaculately dressed boss standing in a shabby apartment with 2 children. "Sir?" "Robert, this is Emily and Michael," Maxwell said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "They're coming with us to see Dr. Winters. The boy has a high fever." To Robert's credit, he adapted quickly. "I'll bring the car around to the front entrance." As Robert departed, Emily looked once more around the apartment, the only home she had known, however humble. "Will we come back here?" Maxwell considered his answer carefully. "Not today. But I promise you won't lose your things. We can send someone for anything you need later." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. As they left the apartment, Maxwell noticed her slip the key into her pocket, a small gesture of independence. The ride to Dr. Winters' Upper East Side practice passed in tense silence. Emily sat rigidly beside Maxwell in the Bentley's leatherback seat, Mikey cradled in her arms. The contrast between her worn clothes and the luxury vehicle couldn't have been starker, yet she maintained a dignity that impressed Maxwell. Dr. Winters, a distinguished man in his 60s who had been Maxwell's physician for decades, met them at his private entrance. If he was surprised by the children's presence, he hid it well. "This way, please," he said, leading them to an examination room. Emily reluctantly allowed Mikey to be placed on the examination table, but remained firmly at his side. The toddler whimpered, reaching for her hand. "It's okay, Mikey," she soothed. "The doctor's going to help you feel better." Dr. Winters examined Mikey with gentle efficiency, taking his temperature, listening to his chest, checking his ears and throat. Maxwell watched from the corner, a strange mixture of fear and hope churning inside him. "Ear infection," Dr. Winters announced finally. "Quite severe, but treatable. I'll prescribe antibiotics and something for the pain. He should start feeling better within 24 hours, though the full course of antibiotics will take 10 days. Relief washed over Emily's face. "So he'll be okay?" "Yes, young lady. With proper care, he'll be fine." Dr. Winters glanced at Maxwell. "I assume you'll ensure he gets that care?" "Absolutely," Maxwell replied without hesitation. While Dr. Winters prepared the prescriptions, Maxwell stepped into the hallway to make a series of calls. To his housekeeper, preparing 2 guest rooms. To his lawyer, explaining the situation in vague terms and requesting an urgent meeting. And finally to his office, cancelling all appointments for the remainder of the week. When he returned to the examination room, Dr. Winters was demonstrating to Emily how to administer the liquid antibiotics. 3 times a day, with food if possible, the doctor was saying. And the pain reliever as needed, but no more than 4 doses in 24 hours. Emily nodded, committing the instructions to memory with intense focus. Maxwell noticed how she didn't write anything down. She didn't need to. The girl clearly possessed an extraordinary mind. "Thank you, doctor," Maxwell said, accepting the medication bags. Dr. Winters drew him aside. "Maxwell, I don't mean to pry, but—" "They're family," Maxwell replied simply. "Recently discovered." The doctor nodded, understanding. "The girl is severely underweight for her age. Nothing dangerous yet, but she needs proper nutrition. and both children should have complete examinations soon. I've written referrals to pediatric specialists. I'll arrange it immediately." They prepared to leave. Emily approached Dr. Winters with solemn formality. "How much do we owe you, sir?" The doctor glanced at Maxwell, then smiled gently at Emily. "It's all taken care of, young lady." Emily frowned. "I need to know how much it costs. For my records," she patted the notebook in her backpack. $750, Dr. Winters replied, understanding her need for accurate information. Emily's eyes widened, but she nodded gravely. "Thank you for helping, Mikey. I'll add it to what we owe Mr. Thornton." The simple dignity of her response struck both men into silence. This child, who had clearly been struggling to survive, was meticulously tracking debts she had no realistic way to repay. Back in the car, with Mikey already dozing under the effect of the first dose of medication, Maxwell turned to Emily. "You don't owe me anything, Emily. I want to help you both." She met his gaze directly. "Everyone wants something, Mr. Thornton. Nobody helps for free." The cynicism from someone so young twisted something in Maxwell's chest. "I'm helping because Mikey is my grandson, and because you've been taking care of him when no one else did, including me." "What happens now?" she asked, the question revealing the vulnerability behind her composed facade. "Now we go to my home. Mikey needs rest, and you both need proper meals and safe beds. Tomorrow we can figure out the next steps. And if I don't want to stay with you?" Maxwell considered his answer carefully. The truth was, he had no legal right to keep her. Mikey perhaps as his biological grandson, but Emily was a different matter entirely. "Then I would respect your decision," he said finally. "But I hope you'll give me a chance to prove you can trust me." Emily studied him with those discerning eyes that seemed to see far more than a child should. "One night," she agreed cautiously, "for Mikey's sake." As the Bentley glided through Manhattan traffic toward his Upper East Side penthouse, Maxwell found himself in entirely uncharted territory. For decades, he had navigated the cutthroat world of New York real estate with confidence and precision. He had built empires of steel and glass, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and outlasted countless competitors. Yet none of that had prepared him for the responsibility now sitting beside him. 2 children, one his blood, both in desperate need of stability and care. Children he had nearly evicted just hours earlier. The irony wasn't lost on him. Maxwell Thornton, who had lost his only son through rigid expectations and emotional distance, was now being given a second chance through the most unexpected circumstances. And he was terrified of failing again. The elevator doors opened directly into Maxwell's penthouse, revealing a space that embodied wealth without warmth, pristine white furniture, abstract art in measured frames, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's glittering skyline. Emily stepped out cautiously, Mikey still cradled against her chest despite Maxwell's repeated offers to carry him. "This is where you live?" she asked, her voice small in the vast open space. "Yes," Maxwell replied, suddenly seeing his home through her eyes. Impressive but intimidating, like a museum where nothing should be touched. Mrs. Perkins, his housekeeper of 15 years, approached with measured steps. Her surprise at the children's presence was betrayed only by a slight widening of her eyes. "Mr. Thornton, the guest rooms are prepared as requested." "Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. This is Emily and Michael." Maxwell gestured to the children. "They'll be staying with us. He's my grandson." To her credit, Mrs. Perkins absorbed this revelation with professional composure. "I see. Welcome, young master." She bent slightly toward Emily. "The little one looks unwell. Would you like me to show you to your rooms so he can rest properly?" Emily glanced at Maxwell, who nodded encouragingly. "It's all right. Mrs. Perkins has worked for me for many years. She'll take good care of you both." "Can we stay in the same room?" Emily asked, her first request since entering the penthouse. "Of course," Mrs. Perkins answered before Maxwell could respond. "I've prepared adjoining rooms, but we can move a smaller bed into the master guest suite if you prefer." Emily nodded gratefully, and Mrs. Perkins led them down a hallway lined with abstract paintings in muted colors. Maxwell followed at a distance, watching as Emily took careful inventory of her surroundings, noting exits, studying the layout, always keeping Mikey close. Her hypervigilance spoke volumes about the life she had been forced to lead. The guest. Suite was larger than the entire apartment they had left behind. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, while a sitting area with plush chairs faced windows overlooking Central Park. An ensuite bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome. "I'll have a crib brought up for the little one," Mrs. Perkins said. "No," Emily replied quickly, "so he sleeps better next to me." Mrs. Perkins nodded, understanding. "Very well, I've laid out some toiletries in the bathroom. Dinner will be ready in 1 hour, but I can bring something up sooner if you're hungry." Emily's composure finally cracked. At the mention of food, her stomach growling audibly, she blushed, embarrassment crossing her features. "Perhaps a light snack while dinner is being prepared?" Mrs. Perkins suggested tactfully. "Yes, please," Emily whispered. "I'll arrange it immediately." Left alone with the children, Maxwell hovered, awkwardly by the door. Emily carefully laid Mikey on the bed, arranging pillows to prevent him from rolling off. The toddler stirred briefly, clutching the pocket watch tighter in his small fist, then settled back into medicated sleep. "He looks better already," Maxwell observed, desperate to break the silence. Emily nodded, her hand lingering on Mikey's forehead. "The medicine is helping. His fever's going down." Maxwell took a tentative step into the room. "Emily, I know this is all very sudden. You must have questions." She turned to face him, weariness evident in the slight slump of her shoulders. "Why did you come to our apartment today?" The real reason. The directness of her question caught him off guard. "To evict you, or rather, to evict Sarah Carter. The rent hadn't been paid in 6 months. Mom tried," Emily said, her voice gaining an edge. "She worked 2 jobs, but then she got sick, and the hospital bills." She trailed off, eyes distant with memories no child should carry. "How long has she been gone?" Maxwell asked gently. 2 months, 3 days. The precision of her answer reflected the magnitude of the loss. "We were doing okay at first. I used her last paycheck for rent and food, but then it ran out." Maxwell tried to process this information. "You've been alone, caring for a toddler, for over 2 months?" Emily nodded, matter of fact. "I'm good at math. I figured out how to make the money last as long as possible, and Mrs. Rivera from 2A would watch Mikey sometimes when I had to go out for supplies." "Go out where? School?" A small humorless smile touched her lips. "I couldn't go to school. Who would take care of Mikey? I've been teaching myself from my old textbooks." The implications staggered Maxwell. While he had been pursuing profit, margins and property acquisitions, this child had been fighting for survival, managing a household and raising an infant, all while continuing her education alone. "You should have had help," he said, regret coloring his voice. "Social services, or—" "They would have separated us," Emily interrupted, her voice fierce. "Put Mikey in one foster home and me in another. I promised Mom I'd keep him safe." Before Maxwell could respond, Mrs. Perkins returned with a tray of assorted fruits, cheese, crackers, and a glass of milk. Emily's eyes widened at the spread. "Just a small something before dinner," Mrs. Perkins said, placing the tray on a side table. "Is there anything else you need, miss?" Emily approached the food with barely contained hunger. "No, thank you." "I'll leave you to rest then. Dinner will be served at 7. As Mrs. Perkins departed, Maxwell noticed Emily's hesitation before the food. "Go ahead," he encouraged. "It's for you." She selected a slice of apple with careful deliberation, then a piece of cheese, eating slowly despite her obvious hunger. Maxwell recognized the behavior of someone accustomed to making food last, to careful rationing. "Emily, you don't have to save any. There's plenty more in the kitchen." She glanced up, surprise crossing her features. "Really? Really? And there will be a full dinner later." This simple reassurance seemed to release something in her. Emily reached for more food, still controlled but less restricted. As she ate, Maxwell noticed her eyeing a door in the corner of the room. "That's a walk-in closet," he explained. "It's bigger than our bathroom was," she observed. The comment hit Maxwell like a physical blow. The disparity between their worlds suddenly seemed grotesque, rather than merely unfortunate. Emily, I want you to know that you and Mikey are safe here. Whatever happens next, I promise I'll make sure you're both taken care of. She studied, him still chewing thoughtfully. Because he's your grandson? Yes, Maxwell admitted. But also because of what you've done for him. You've been extraordinary, Emily. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. He's my brother, not by blood, but... She glanced at the sleeping toddler. Mom loved him like her own. So do I. Family isn't always about blood, Maxwell said, the truth of the statement surprising even him. For someone who had built his life around his biological legacy, it was a revelation. Emily yawned suddenly, the events of the day catching up with her. Maxwell noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands, signs of exhaustion beyond her years. Why don't you rest before dinner? I'll have Mrs. Perkins wake you when it's ready. For a moment, Emily looked tempted, her gaze drifting to the luxurious bed. Then she shook her head. I need to give Mikey his medicine in 2 hours, and I should stay awake in case he needs me. I could wake you, Maxwell offered. Or Mrs. Perkins could. No offense, Mr. Thornton, but I don't really know you yet. Her matter-of-fact tone held no accusation, just pragmatic reality. Fair enough. Maxwell moved toward the door. I'll let you have some peace. The bathroom has everything you might need if you want to freshen up. And Emily, my room is just down the hall if you need anything. Anything at all. She nodded, her attention already returning to Mikey. Maxwell closed, the door softly behind him, then leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the day's revelations. His grandson, Jason's son, was sleeping in his guest room, cared for by a girl with no blood relation but more dedication than Maxwell had shown his own child. He made his way to his study, a dark, panelled sanctuary of leather and mahogany. Pouring himself 2 fingers of scotch, he sank into his chair and unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside lay a photo album. He rarely viewed pictures of Jason throughout his childhood, culminating in his high school graduation. There were no images after that. Their relationship had deteriorated too severely. The last photo showed Jason scowling beside Maxwell. At his graduation, the physical proximity belying their emotional distance. Had there been signs even then of the young man's plans to leave? Had Maxwell been too focused on molding his heir to see his son was breaking? The buzz of his phone interrupted his reverie, his lawyer returning his earlier call. James, Maxwell answered. Thank you for getting back to me so quickly. Of course, Max, your message sounded urgent. Something about your son and a child. Maxwell took a steadying breath. I need to establish guardianship of my grandson, and potentially another child as well, a girl with no biological relation to me. James's silence spoke volumes. I see. May I ask where these children's parents are? My son his whereabouts are unknown. He's been estranged for nearly 3 years. The children's mother has passed away. The girl, Emily, has been caring for my grandson alone. Without any adult supervision for how long? Over 2 months, James exhaled slowly. That's a complex situation, Max. For your grandson, we could potentially establish guardianship based on biological connection, especially if your son is unreachable. But for the girl, it's more complicated. There would be involvement from child. Protective services, investigations. I don't want them separated, Maxwell said firmly. Emily has been the only constant in my grandson's life. She's extraordinary, James. Truly extraordinary. I understand, but the legal system has protocols. Then find a way around them, Maxwell interrupted, his voice taking on the edge that had intimidated countless business opponents. These children have been through enough. I won't have them subjected to more trauma because of bureaucratic red tape. I'll see what I can do, James conceded. In the meantime, document everything. The conditions you found them in, the care Emily was providing, any evidence of your grandson's identity. And Max, tread carefully. Good intentions don't always translate to good outcomes in family court. After ending the call, Maxwell sat in silence, contemplating the magnitude of the changes a single day had brought. Yesterday, his biggest concern had been a minor dip in quarterly profits. Today, He was responsible for 2 children's futures. Soft knock at the study door roused him from his thoughts. Mrs. Perkins entered, her usually impassive expression softened with concern. "Sir, dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Would you like me to wake the children?" "Are they both sleeping?" Mrs. Perkins nodded. "I checked in quietly." The girl finally succumbed to exhaustion, curled protectively around the little one. "I've never—" She hesitated, uncharacteristically, emotional. "I've never seen such devotion in someone so young." Maxwell nodded, unsurprised. "Let them sleep, Mrs. Perkins. They need rest more than food right now. We can warm their dinner later." "Very good, sir." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Thornton, if I may, those children have clearly been through a great deal. Whatever happens next, they'll need stability, patience, and understanding." The gentle advice from his usually reserved housekeeper struck Maxwell deeply. "You're right, Mrs. Perkins, and I fear those are qualities I've never been known for. Then perhaps, sir, this is an opportunity to develop them." With that quiet observation, she withdrew, leaving Maxwell to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. He had built his empire through ruthless efficiency and unwavering standards. Those same qualities had cost him his relationship with Jason. Now faced with these children, one his blood, one not, both equally vulnerable, Maxwell realized he stood at a crossroads. He could continue as the man he had always been, or he could become someone new, someone worthy of the trust these children needed to place in him. Rising from his chair, Maxwell moved to the window overlooking the city he had helped shape. Skyscrapers bearing the Westridge logo punctuated the skyline, monuments to his business acumen and relentless drive. Yet for all their impressive height, they suddenly seemed hollow achievements compared to what Emily had accomplished with nothing but determination and love. A child with empty pockets had proven richer in the things that truly mattered than a man with billions. Maxwell returned to the guest suite, opening the door quietly. Emily and Mikey lay curled together on the massive bed, her arm protectively around his small body even in sleep. The pocket watch rested between them, a golden link to a past that had now come full circle. Moving silently, Maxwell draped an additional blanket over them. Both then retreated to the doorway. Tomorrow would bring complicated conversations, legal challenges, and uncertain paths forward. But tonight, for the first time in years, Maxwell Thornton felt something unexpected taking root in his heart. Hope. 3. Weeks passed in a whirlwind of adjustments. Mikey recovered from his ear infection, his cheeks regaining healthy color as he thrived under proper medical care and nutrition. Emily remained cautious, but gradually allowed her vigilance to soften, as the routines of Maxwell's household proved reliable day after day. Food appeared at regular intervals, clothes fit properly. Warm baths became nightly rituals rather than rare luxuries. For Maxwell, the transformation was equally profound. Board meetings and property acquisitions took secondary importance to pediatrician appointments and conversations with his lawyer about guardianship proceedings. His massive penthouse, once an elegant showcase rarely fully inhabited, now contained evidence of children, sippy cups in the kitchen, a basket of toys in the living room, picture books stacked on end tables. On this particular morning, Maxwell sat at the breakfast table reviewing documents, while Emily methodically cut Mikey's pancakes into perfect bite-sized pieces. The toddler babbled happily, secure in his high chair, occasionally reaching for Emily with sticky fingers. "Remember what we practiced, Mikey," Emily prompted gently. "Can you say more, please?" "Mo peas," the little boy responded, his vocabulary expanding daily. "Very good," Emily praised, adding another slice of banana to his plate. Maxwell watched the interaction over the rim of his coffee cup, continually amazed by Emily's natural caregiving abilities. She approached Mikey's development with the same precision she applied to everything, researching age-appropriate milestones in books Maxwell had purchased, creating simple games to advance his motor skills, reading to him each night to build vocabulary. "Emily," Maxwell began, setting down his papers, "I wanted to discuss something important with you." She looked up, instantly alert. 3 weeks of safety hadn't erased her instinct to prepare for bad news. My lawyer has been working on establishing legal guardianship for both you and Mikey, Maxwell continued carefully. For Mikey, the process is straightforward since I'm his biological grandfather. But for you, I understand, Emily said, her voice small but composed. I'm not really family. That's not true, Maxwell responded firmly. Family isn't always about blood, remember? You are absolutely Mikey's family, and I want you to be part of mine as well. Hope flickered across her face before caution tamped it down. But legally, it's more complicated, Maxwell acknowledged. But my lawyer believes we have options. The most straightforward would be for me to become your foster parent with the eventual goal of adoption. Emily's fork paused midway to Mikey's plate. Adoption? You'd want to adopt me? The vulnerability in her question pierced Maxwell's heart. Yes, Emily, if that's something you would want too. She studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to evaluate not just his words, but the intentions behind them. Why? Because you belong with Mikey. Because you've cared for him when no one else did. Because you're extraordinary, Emily, and I would be honored to have you as part of my family. Emily absorbed his words, her practical mind clearly processing the implications. What happens now? A social worker named Ms. Dawson will visit tomorrow. She'll need to speak with both of us, assess the living situation, and make recommendations to the court. Anxiety flashed across Emily's features. Will she take us away? No, Maxwell assured her, projecting more confidence than he felt. Her job is to ensure you're in a safe, appropriate environment, and you are. Emily nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her expression. Should I show her my notebook, the one where I kept track of everything for Mikey? If you're comfortable sharing it, yes. It demonstrates how responsible you've been. Okay. She returned to feeding Mikey, her movements slightly less fluid as she processed this new information. There's something else, Maxwell continued. I've been researching schools. Emily looked up sharply. Schools? Yes. You mentioned you were teaching yourself from textbooks, which is remarkable, but you deserve a proper education with teachers and classmates. What about Mikey? The question came immediately, predictably. There's an excellent preschool program that would be perfect for him. Just mornings at first while you're in school. Mrs. Perkins can pick him up at noon. Emily frowned, considering. He's never been away from me. He might get scared. We could transition slowly, Maxwell suggested. Perhaps you could visit the preschool together a few times before he starts. Get him comfortable with the environment and teachers. She nodded slowly. That might work. What kind of school would I go to? I've arranged interviews at several top private schools in Manhattan. Given your circumstances, they've agreed to assess you regardless of formal academic records. Emily's eyes widened. Private schools, like with uniforms and stuff? Some have uniforms, yes, Maxwell confirmed, smiling slightly at her reaction. But more importantly, they offer exceptional education and opportunities. Will the other kids know? About me, I mean. Where I came from? The question revealed Emily's underlying concern. Not about academics, which she clearly excelled at naturally, but about belonging in a world so different from the one she knew. Your background is private. Emily, the schools know only what they need to for admission purposes. What you share with classmates would be entirely up to you. She absorbed this, then asked with characteristic directness, These schools, they're for rich kids, aren't they? Maxwell hesitated before answering honestly. Yes, many students come from privileged backgrounds, but these schools also value diversity and offer scholarships to talented students from all circumstances. I won't fit in, Emily stated, not self-pitying but matter of fact. You might be surprised, Maxwell countered gently. Intelligence and character transcend background, and you have both in abundance. Before Emily could respond, Mikey interrupted by flinging a piece of pancake onto the floor with delighted precision. Hoops, he declared, one of his newest words. Emily immediately slipped from her chair to clean up the mess, but Mrs. Perkins appeared with a cloth as if summoned. I've got it, miss, the housekeeper said warmly. Children make messes. It's perfectly natural. Emily returned to her seat, still unused to having household help. Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Maxwell checked his watch. I have a meeting at 10, but I should be back by 2. Would you and Mikey like to visit the park this afternoon? The weather's supposed to be excellent. Emily's face brightened. Yes, please. Mikey loves the ducks at the pond. Perfect. I'll be back in time for a good long visit. Maxwell rose, gathering his papers. Emily, remember that Miss Chen is coming. At 11 for your math assessment. Mrs. Perkins will show her in. Emily nodded, a hint of excitement breaking through her usual reserve. The prospect of being formally evaluated in mathematics, her natural strength, clearly appealed to her. Maxwell hesitated, then bent to kiss the top of Mikey's head before departing, a gesture that had become natural over the past weeks. He glanced at Emily, who still stiffened at physical affection. Respecting her boundaries, he simply smiled warmly before heading to the elevator. As the doors closed, he reflected on how completely his priorities had shifted. The meeting he was attending, once the highlight of his week, a major development, deal for a new Westridge Tower, now seemed merely an obligation to fulfill before returning to what really mattered. An afternoon at the park with 2 children who had unexpectedly become the center of his world. The Dalton School's hallways gleamed with privilege, polished wood, glass display cases showcasing student achievements, classrooms equipped with technology that would be at home in corporate boardrooms. Emily walked beside Maxwell, her new uniform blazer stiff with newness, her eyes cataloguing every detail of this foreign environment. 2 days had passed since her assessment with Ms. Chen, whose report had apparently opened doors. 3 elite schools had offered immediate admission, impressed by Emily's mathematical abilities, which tested at high school level despite her young age and interrupted formal education. This is the math department, explained Mrs. Foster, the admissions director, leading them through a corridor. Given Emily's exceptional aptitude, we'd place her in our accelerated program with some individualized instruction to address any gaps. Emily said nothing, but Maxwell noticed her fingers tracing equations printed on posters as they passed. Complex formulas that meant nothing to him but clearly spoke to her. And socially? Maxwell asked, voicing the concern Emily wouldn't. Emily's educational background has been unconventional. Mrs. Foster smiled reassuringly. We pride ourselves on creating inclusive communities, Mr. Thornton. Our student support team would work closely with Emily to ensure a smooth transition, and our peer mentor program pairs new students with established ones who can help navigate the social landscape. They continued the tour, visiting science labs, art studios, and the library, a 2-story wonderland of books that finally elicited a visible reaction from Emily. She paused before a section of mathematical texts, her fingers hovering near the spines as if magnetized. You can borrow any of these once you're enrolled, Mrs. Foster noted, pleased by Emily's interest. As they approached a classroom where students approximately Emily's age were engaged in animated discussion, Mrs. Foster paused. Would you like to observe for a moment, Emily? This is our 4th grade humanities class discussing Greek mythology. Emily glanced at Maxwell, who nodded encouragingly. She stepped closer to the doorway, watching the interaction with analytical intensity. Inside, a diverse group of students sat in a circle, debating whether Icarus was foolish or brave for flying too close to the sun. Their arguments were sophisticated, their vocabulary advanced. Emily observed silently, her expression unreadable. A girl with dark curly hair noticed Emily in the doorway and waved cheerfully. Emily hesitated, then offered a small wave in return. That's Zoe Kim, Mrs. Foster explained as they continued walking. One of our scholarship students and a brilliant young mathematician herself. She would actually be one of your peer mentors if you choose Dalton. They completed the tour in Mrs. Foster's office, where the admissions director outlined financial details that were irrelevant to Maxwell, but included for formality's sake. Throughout the conversation, Emily remained quiet, but attentive, her posture gradually relaxing as the visit continued. Do you have any questions, Emily? Mrs. Foster asked kindly. Emily straightened in her chair. What happens if I'm too far behind in some subjects? I've been teaching myself, but I might have missed things. A very thoughtful question, Mrs. Foster replied. We would conduct comprehensive assessments in each subject area and develop a customized plan to address any gaps. You wouldn't be expected to know everything immediately. Emily nodded, satisfied with the answer. And Mikey, my brother. If he gets sick or needs me during the day. Maxwell interceded gently. Emily, we've discussed this. If Mikey needs anything while you're at school, Mrs. Perkins or I will handle it. Your job during school hours is to be a student. We understand family commitments, Mrs. Foster added, and in true emergencies, of course, we would contact you immediately. Emily considered this, then asked her final question. Would the other kids know that Mr. Thornton isn't my real father? That I used to be. She trailed off, unable to articulate her concern fully. Mrs. Foster's expression softened. Your personal history is private, Emily. We don't discuss students' family situations without permission. As for your classmates, children can sometimes ask direct questions, but you're never obligated to share more than you're comfortable with. The answer seemed to reassure Emily. As they left the building, Maxwell asked, What did you think? Emily considered her response carefully. The library was amazing, and I liked the math posters, but the kids seemed, she searched for the right word, different from me. Different isn't necessarily bad, Maxwell offered, just different. They've probably never had to worry about rent or buying food, Emily observed, or taking care of someone else. Maxwell couldn't deny this reality. No, they likely haven't faced the challenges you have, but that doesn't mean they can't become your friends or that you can't find your place among them. They walked in silence for a few moments before Emily asked, Do I have to decide right now? Which school to go to? Not at all. We have 2 more visits scheduled, and you should take time to consider each option. This is your education, Emily. Your opinion matters most. She nodded, visibly relieved. I want to talk to Mikey about it first. The comment might have seemed odd, consulting a toddler about educational decisions, but Maxwell understood. Emily and Mikey were a unit, a family within his emerging family. Major decisions affected them both, even if Mikey couldn't fully comprehend them. As they approached the car where Robert waited, Emily suddenly asked, Mr. Thornton, if I go to school here, will I have to call you Dad? In front of the other kids, I mean. The question caught Maxwell by surprise. You can call me whatever you're comfortable with, Emily. Maxwell, Mr. Thornton, or something else. There's no pressure either way. She nodded thoughtfully. Okay. I just wanted to know the rules. With us, Emily, there are no rules about things like that. Only what feels right to you. Her shoulders relaxed slightly at this reassurance. As they settled into the car, Maxwell received a text from Mrs. Perkins. Mikey asking for Emily. Keeps saying, Emmy back soon, every few minutes. Maxwell smiled, showing Emily the message. Someone misses you. For the first time, that day, Emily's face broke into a genuine smile. Can we go straight home instead of the other place we were supposed to visit? I can see that school another day. Of course, Maxwell replied without hesitation, directing Robert to return to the penthouse. As they drove through Manhattan's crowded streets, Maxwell observed Emily gazing out the window, her expression contemplative. In just 3 weeks, she had begun the journey from desperate survival to potential privilege, a transition that would challenge any adult, let alone a child. Yet beneath her practical exterior, Maxwell recognized something crucial. Emily. Carter possessed not just extraordinary intelligence, but extraordinary resilience. Whatever challenges lay ahead, social adjustments, legal proceedings, building trust, she would face them with the same determination that had kept her and Mikey alive against impossible odds. His responsibility was to ensure she never had to face those challenges alone again. 6 months transformed the penthouse from a pristine showcase into a genuine home. Mikey's 2nd birthday had been celebrated with modest fanfare. Maxwell wanted to shower the boy with extravagance, but Emily had gently suggested that too many gifts would overwhelm him. She was right, as usual. The toddler had been delighted, with his new stuffed elephant, picture books, and the small play kitchen that now occupied a corner of the living room. Emily had chosen Dalton after careful consideration of all three schools. 2 months into her enrollment, she was thriving academically despite initial social awkwardness. Her math teacher had already moved her to 6th grade curriculum, while her other subjects remained at advanced 4th grade level. Zoe Kim, the curly-haired girl they'd spotted during their tour, had indeed become Emily's first genuine friend, bonding over shared mathematical obsessions and a mutual disinterest in typical playground politics. Maxwell stood at his office window, gazing at the Manhattan skyline without really seeing it. The quarterly report on his desk showed record profits for Westridge Development, but his attention kept drifting to the approaching school pickup time. Emily would be waiting at 3:15, and though Robert was perfectly capable of collecting her, Maxwell had found himself rearranging meetings to make the afternoon drive whenever possible. His executive assistant, Diane, entered after a perfunctory knock. "The team from Goldman Sachs is here for the financing meeting, Mr. Thornton." Maxwell checked his watch. "Reschedule them for tomorrow morning." Diane hesitated, clearly weighing professional obligation against self-preservation. "Sir, this is the 3rd rescheduling. Mr. Brennan was quite emphatic about—" "Tomorrow morning, Diane, and tell Robert to have the car ready in 20 minutes. "Yes, sir." She retreated, used to her boss's uncompromising manner, if not his. Newly revised priorities. Maxwell gathered his belongings, mentally shifting from CEO to guardian mode. He was halfway to the elevator when his phone rang. James Parker, his lawyer. "James, I'm on my way out. Can this wait?" "I'm afraid not." "Max, Judge Harriman has made her decision on the guardianship petition." Maxwell stopped walking. "And?" "For Michael, it's granted as expected. Full legal guardianship with a clear path to adoption if you choose to pursue it." "And Emily?" Maxwell asked, tension tightening his chest. James's slight pause spoke volumes. "It's complicated. The judge acknowledges the unique circumstances and the bond between the children. She's granting temporary guardianship for 6 months, with continued supervision from social services." 6 months? Maxwell's voice rose in frustration. "Emily has been thriving here. Ms. Dawson's reports have been exemplary. What more do they want?" "It's not about what you've provided, Max. The concern is that Emily has a living relative." The statement hit Maxwell like a physical blow. "What? Who?" "An aunt in Chicago, Sarah Carter's sister. CPS located her during their standard family search. Why am I only hearing about this now? The aunt only recently responded to inquiries. Apparently she lost touch with Sarah years ago and was unaware of her sister's passing or Emily's situation." Maxwell's mind raced with implications. Has this woman expressed interest in taking Emily? "She's requested information which legally CPS must provide. Whether she'll pursue custody remains to be seen." Maxwell fought to control his rising panic. "Emily belongs here, James, with Mikey. He stopped himself from saying with me, the sentiment still too vulnerable to express aloud. "I understand, Max. And the court recognizes the importance of keeping the children together. That's why you've been granted temporary guardianship, despite the aunt's emergence. But ultimately blood relations carry significant weight in family court. This aunt has never met Emily, never helped when Sarah was struggling, never even knew Emily existed until now," Maxwell argued, anger sharpening his words. "How could she possibly have more right to Emily than the people who've become her family?" "The legal system is imperfect," James conceded. "But for now, focus on the positive. Emily remains with you while this situation develops. And if this aunt decides she wants custody, then we prepare to demonstrate why Emily's best interests are served by staying with you. We gather evidence, testimony, expert opinions. We fight," Maxwell translated, his voice hardening with resolve. "Yes, Max, we fight." James's tone softened. "How is she doing, really? Beyond the official reports?" The question momentarily disarmed Maxwell. "She's extraordinary. Academically, brilliant, of course, but it's more than that. She notices everything, anticipates needs before they're expressed. She still maintains that notebook, tracking expenses as if she needs to account for every dollar spent on her and Mikey. Old survival habits die hard," James observed. Yes, but there are moments now, genuine smiles, occasional laughter, even small rebellions against bedtime, normal child behaviors emerging through the armor she built around herself. That's important, Max. Document those changes, that progression toward childhood. It strengthens our position immeasurably. After ending the call, Maxwell stood motionless in the corridor, processing this new threat to the family unit he'd begun to cherish. The elevator arrived, but he ignored it, turning instead back toward his office. He needed to think, to plan, to strategize as he would for any high-stakes business confrontation. Diane looked up in surprise as he re-entered. "Sir, the car? Tell Robert I'll be another hour, and get me everything we have on the Carter family, specifically any sister of Sarah Carter in Chicago." "Yes, sir, and the Goldman Sachs meeting." Maxwell waved dismissively. "Still rescheduled." Alone in his office, Maxwell paced the perimeter, mind churning with contingency plans. He could relocate the entire household, perhaps to the Connecticut estate or further to the house in Switzerland. But no, that would appear as flight, undermining their legal position. He could investigate the aunt, find disqualifying information in her background. Or perhaps a more diplomatic approach, financial incentives to relinquish interest in Emily. The ruthless efficiency that had built his empire reactivated in defense of his newfound family. He would deploy every resource, leverage every connection, spend whatever necessary to ensure Emily remained where she belonged. His ringing phone interrupted his plotting. The screen displayed Emily's school. Maxwell's heart rate spiked as he answered. "Mr. Thornton, this is Mrs. Foster from Dalton. I'm calling about Emily." "Is she all right?" Maxwell demanded. "Yes, she's fine physically, but there's been an incident. Emily became quite upset during lunch period. We think it would be best if you collected her early today." "What happened?" Mrs. Foster hesitated. "I'd prefer to discuss it in person, Mr. Thornton. Emily is waiting in my office." "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Maxwell rushed from the building, barking instructions at Robert via phone. The car was waiting at the curb when he emerged, and they navigated Manhattan traffic with aggressive efficiency. At Dalton, Mrs. Foster greeted him with professional concern. "Thank you for coming promptly, Mr. Thornton." "Where's Emily?" "In my office with Ms. Bennett, our school counselor." "What happened?" Maxwell repeated, impatience edging his tone. Mrs. Foster led him down the corridor, explaining as they walked. During lunch, some fifth-grade students were discussing family backgrounds. One boy, rather insensitively, questioned Emily about her parents. When she declined to elaborate, he persisted, eventually suggesting that perhaps she was, in his words, a charity case. Maxwell's jaw tightened. "And?" Emily responded. Mrs. Foster chose her words carefully. Forcefully, not physically, but with a level of verbal intensity that surprised everyone present. They reached the office door. Through the glass panel, Maxwell could see Emily sitting rigidly in a chair, her face composed but her eyes betraying turmoil. "Is she being punished for defending herself?" Maxwell asked, protective instinct flaring. "Not at all," Mrs. Foster assured him. "The boy has been disciplined for his inappropriate comments. We simply felt Emily might benefit from returning home early today, given her distress." Maxwell nodded, collecting himself before entering. Emily looked up, relief, briefly, crossing her features before she resumed her neutral expression. "Hey," he said gently, taking the chair beside her. "Tough day?" Emily shrugged, eyes downcast. "They're sending me home." "They thought you might be more comfortable at home, that's all. You're not in trouble." The school counselor, a warm-eyed woman in her 40s, spoke softly. "Emily, would you like to tell Mr. Thornton what happened, or would you prefer I explain?" "I can tell him," Emily replied, her voice steadier than her expression. She turned to Maxwell. "A boy named Trevor asked if I was your real daughter. I said it wasn't his business. He kept asking, saying I didn't look like a Thornton. Then he said you probably just felt sorry for me." Maxwell maintained his composure with effort, allowing Emily to continue. "I told him he didn't know anything about me or you, but he laughed and said you were probably just using me to look charitable. In the newspapers. Emily's hands tightened in her lap. So I told him his father only donated the new science lab because he got caught cheating on his taxes. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Maxwell had to suppress a surprised laugh. The accusation was remarkably specific and, he suspected, devastatingly accurate given what he knew of Trevor's father, a hedge fund manager with a questionable reputation. Ms. Bennet interjected gently. Emily has quite a gift for observation and retention. She apparently recalled details from a conversation she overheard at a school fundraiser. I shouldn't have said it, Emily acknowledged, though without genuine remorse. But he wouldn't. Stop, and he made Zoe cry too, saying she was only here because of diversity quotas. Maxwell's remaining amusement vanished. I see, Mrs. Foster sighed. Trevor will be addressing his behavior with the headmaster. We take this kind of interaction very seriously, Mr. Thornton. As do I, Maxwell replied, his tone clipped. Is there anything else? Not from our perspective, Mrs. Foster answered. Emily can return tomorrow as usual. Outside the building, Maxwell guided Emily to the waiting car. She climbed in silently, her backpack clutched against her chest like armor. Are you angry? She asked once they were moving, her voice small. Maxwell considered his response carefully. Not at you, no. I'm angry that you were put in that position. That boy had no right to question your place at Dalton or in our family. Emily relaxed marginally. I probably shouldn't have mentioned his dad's taxes. Probably not, Maxwell agreed, though I suspect you were accurate. A tiny smile flickered across her face. I heard his dad talking at the benefit dinner. He didn't know I was listening. You notice a lot, don't you? Emily nodded. People say things when they think kids aren't paying attention, or when they think kids won't understand. Maxwell recognized the survival skill for what it was. Hypervigilance developed through necessity. The constant monitoring of adult moods and conversations that had kept her safe in uncertain circumstances. Emily, he began carefully, there's something we need to discuss when we get home, about your guardianship situation. Her body tensed immediately. Did the judge say no? Do I have to leave? No, nothing like that, Maxwell assured her quickly. The judge granted me temporary guardianship. You're staying with us. But not permanently. Emily's perceptiveness cut straight to the implication. Maxwell opted for honesty. The court has located your mother's sister in Chicago, your aunt. Emily frowned. I don't have an aunt. You may not have known about her. Your mother might have lost touch with her. Mom never mentioned any sister, Emily insisted. Never. And she told me everything. Maxwell couldn't argue with Emily's certainty. Well, according to records, she exists, and the court is obligated to inform her about you. Emily processed this information, her analytical mind working through implications. Does she want to take me away from you and Mikey? We don't know yet. She's only recently been notified of your situation. I won't go, Emily stated firmly. I belong with Mikey. He needs me. Maxwell reached across the seat, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Emily took it, a rare acceptance of physical comfort. I promise you, Emily, I will do everything in my power to keep you with us. Everything. They rode in silence for several blocks before Emily spoke again. That boy, Trevor. He said there was an article about us in the newspaper, about you taking in 2 poor kids. Maxwell winced. He'd tried to shield the children from media attention, but his transformation from ruthless developer to guardian of orphaned children had proven irresistible to certain publications. There may have been some coverage, he acknowledged. I didn't seek it out. Is that why you took us in for good publicity? The directness of her question struck him like a physical blow. No, Emily, absolutely not. Then why? She pressed, her gaze unwavering. You didn't know us. You were going to evict us. Why change your mind? Maxwell considered deflecting, but recognized the moment's importance. Emily deserved honesty. I changed my mind because I saw something extraordinary, a child with more courage and compassion than most adults I've known. Because Mikey is my blood, yes, but more importantly, because you loved him when no one else did, including me. He paused, gathering himself. And because meeting you two made me realize how empty my life had become, how little all my success actually meant. Emily studied him, searching for deception. Finding none, she nodded once, seemingly satisfied. Okay. The simple acceptance meant more to Maxwell than any business accolade ever had. When they arrived home, Mikey raced to greet them, his face lighting with joy at the unexpected early return of his sister. "Emmy home!" he exclaimed, wrapping himself around her legs. Emily knelt to embrace him, her earlier distress melting away. "Hey, buddy! Did you have a good day with Mrs. Perkins?" "We made cookies," Mikey announced proudly. "Mostly he watched," Mrs. Perkins clarified, appearing from the kitchen, "but he was an excellent taste tester." Maxwell observed the scene, the housekeeper, who had never smiled at him in 15 years, now beaming. At a toddler with cookie crumbs on his shirt. Emily, still in her school uniform, transforming from guarded pre-adolescent to nurturing sister, and his own heart expanding with emotions he'd long considered irrelevant to success. Family. He'd pursued wealth believing it would secure his legacy, never understanding that true legacy wasn't measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in connections to others, in love given and received. Now that he'd found it, this unlikely, unconventional family unit, Maxwell would move heaven and earth to preserve it. Aunt or no aunt, judge or no judge, nothing would separate these children from each other or from him. As Emily led Mikey toward the kitchen to inspect the cookies, Maxwell quietly retreated to his study to make a call. The number he dialed wasn't in his regular contacts. It belonged to a particular kind of investigator, one he'd occasionally employed for sensitive business matters requiring absolute discretion. "Sullivan," answered a gruff voice. "It's Thornton. I need information on a woman in Chicago, Sarah Carter's sister. Everything, employment, finances, relationships, history, particularly any contact with Sarah in the past decade." "Timeline?" "Yesterday." "That'll cost you." "Price is irrelevant. Just find me something I can use." Maxwell ended the call, aware he was reverting to old patterns, leveraging power and resources to eliminate obstacles. But this wasn't about business advantage or profit margins. This was about protecting Emily from further disruption, from being torn away from the only family she had left. If that required bending ethical boundaries, so be it. Some things were worth fighting for by any means necessary. Family was one of them. The visitor arrived on a crisp October afternoon, exactly 9 months after Maxwell had discovered Emily and Mikey in that run-down Bronx apartment. The intercom buzzed while Emily was helping Mikey with a puzzle on the living room floor, their heads bent together in mutual concentration. "Mr. Thornton," came Mrs. Perkins's voice, uncharacteristically tense. "There's a Ms. Stephanie Powell here. She says—" "She's expected." Maxwell exchanged a glance with Emily, who had frozen at the unfamiliar name. "I'll be right there, Mrs. Perkins." "Who's Stephanie Powell?" Emily asked, immediately alert to potential threat. "Your aunt," Maxwell answered honestly. "She contacted my lawyer yesterday requesting a meeting." Emily's face paled. "You didn't tell me." "I was going to discuss it with you tonight after Mikey was in bed. I didn't expect her to appear without confirmation." "She's here to take me away," Emily stated. Not a question, but a resigned conclusion. "No one is taking you anywhere," Maxwell assured her, though his own stomach knotted with apprehension. "This is just a conversation." Emily stood, positioning herself protectively beside Mikey, who remained oblivious to the tension, happily fitting puzzle pieces together. "Should I go to my room?" she asked, practical as always. Maxwell considered. "That's your choice, Emily. You're welcome to stay or to join us later or not at all, whatever makes you most comfortable." She hesitated, torn between self-protection and the need to confront this new threat directly. "I'll stay with Mikey for now, but if you need me—" "I'll call you," Maxwell promised. He straightened his tie and moved toward the foyer, where Mrs. Perkins stood with barely concealed disapproval beside a woman in her mid-30s. Stephanie Powell was blonde like Emily, but where the child's features were delicate and thoughtful, the woman's were sharper, more calculating. She wore an expensive-looking dress that nonetheless seemed slightly ill-fitting, as if purchased hastily for this occasion. "Ms. Powell," Maxwell greeted her with controlled politeness. "I wasn't aware we had confirmed a meeting for today." "Mr. Thornton," she replied, her Midwestern accent softened but still detectable. "I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I've traveled from Chicago specifically to meet my niece. I felt 9 months was long enough to wait." Maxwell gestured toward his study, unwilling to conduct this conversation where Emily might overhear. "Please, let's speak privately." Once the door closed behind them, Stephanie declined the offered seat, instead wandering the perimeter of Maxwell's study, examining his credentials and awards with unconcealed interest. "Impressive empire you've built," she commented, lifting a Crystal Industry Award before setting it down carelessly. "Real estate development must be quite lucrative." "It can be," Maxwell replied neutrally. "Miss Powell, I understand you're interested in meeting Emily, but I'm concerned about the abruptness of your appearance. Emily has experienced significant trauma and upheaval. Any changes to her situation require careful handling." Stephanie turned, her expression hardening. "Changes to her situation? Mr. Thornton, with all due respect, the situation is that you, a man with no legal or biological connection to my niece, have somehow obtained temporary custody of her. I'm her blood relative, her only living relative." "Except for Mikey," Maxwell countered, "her brother in every way that matters." "The toddler isn't her brother," Stephanie dismissed. "They aren't related by blood, and while I sympathize with the attachment she's formed, Emily belongs with family, real family." Maxwell maintained his composure with effort. "Emily and Mikey have been through extraordinary circumstances together. Their bond is profound and crucial to both their well-being. Separating them would be traumatic." "Traumatic?" Stephanie laughed without humor. "What's traumatic is discovering your sister has been gone for nearly a year and no one bothered to inform you, that your niece has been living with a stranger, rather than her own family." Maxwell studied her, hearing the genuine grievance beneath the belligerence. "When did you last speak with your sister, Ms. Powell?" She hesitated. "That's irrelevant." "I disagree. Emily says Sarah never mentioned having a sister, not once in 8 years. We had her with differences," Stephanie admitted reluctantly. "But that doesn't change the fact that I'm Emily's aunt." Maxwell leaned forward. "Ms. Powell, I'll be direct. My investigator found no record of contact between you and Sarah for over 12 years. No phone calls, no letters, no financial support when she was struggling as a single mother. Where were you when she was working double shifts to pay rent, when she became ill without health insurance?" Stephanie's face flushed. "You had me investigated. How dare you?" "I dare because I care about Emily's well-being above all else," Maxwell replied calmly, "including my own preferences and certainly including yours." "My relationship with Sarah was complicated," Stephanie said defensively, "but that has nothing to do with my right to raise my niece." "Legal rights and moral rights aren't always the same," Maxwell observed. "Why now, Miss Powell? After 9 months of silence since being notified of Emily's situation." Stephanie's gaze shifted away. "I needed time to prepare, to make arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" "Housing, schools, the practical considerations of taking in a child." Maxwell nodded thoughtfully. "All valid concerns, though I notice you've made no mention of Emily's emotional needs, her academic progress, or her established support system." Stephanie's expression hardened. "Don't presume to lecture me about my own niece, Mr. Thornton. I'm not the one who swooped in and claimed a child that isn't mine." "No," Maxwell agreed. "You're the one who ignored that child's existence until it became convenient to acknowledge it." Before Stephanie could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. "You're not my aunt." Both adults turned to find Emily standing there, her slender frame tense with defiance. Maxwell silently cursed himself for not checking that the door was fully closed. "Emily," Stephanie's demeanor instantly transformed, softening into something almost saccharine. "Oh my goodness, look at you. You have your mother's eyes." "No, I don't," Emily replied flatly. "Mum's eyes were green. Mine are blue, like my dad's." Stephanie faltered momentarily. "Well, it's been some time since I've seen Sarah. Memory plays tricks." You never saw her, Emily stated with certainty. She would have told me if she had a sister. She told me everything. Sweetheart, adults sometimes keep complicated relationships to themselves. Your mother and I had our differences, but blood is blood. Emily's gaze was unflinching. Did you send her birthday cards or Christmas presents? Did you call when she was in the hospital? Emily, Maxwell interrupted gently. You don't need to. No, it's okay, Emily insisted. I want to know. She turned back to Stephanie. Mom kept everything, every card, every note, every picture. There was nothing from any sister, not one thing. Stephanie's artificial warmth cooled. Your mother chose to cut me out of her life. Emily, that wasn't my decision. Why? Emily pressed. What did you do to her? That's a very complicated adult situation that happened before you were born. I understand complicated things, Emily countered. Try me. Maxwell suppressed a smile despite the tension. Emily's formidable intellect and directness often caught adults off guard, a dynamic he had witnessed repeatedly in parent-teacher conferences and social settings. Stephanie's patience visibly thinned. This isn't an appropriate conversation to have right now. The important thing is that I'm here now, and I'm prepared to give you a proper home with family. I already have a home, Emily replied, and a family. Mr. Thornton isn't your family. Sweetie, he's just been kind enough to take you in temporarily. Emily's chin lifted slightly. Family isn't about blood. It's about who stays when things get hard, who takes care of you when you're sick, who reads you stories and helps with homework and makes sure you're safe. The simple eloquence of her definition hung in the air between them. That's a lovely sentiment, Stephanie replied condescendingly, but the courts recognize biological connections. And as your only living relative, I have priority in determining your future. Actually, Maxwell interjected, his tone hardening, that's not entirely accurate. The court has granted me temporary guardianship with consideration of permanent custody. Any change to that arrangement would require demonstration that such change serves Emily's best interests, which obviously includes placement with actual family, Stephanie insisted. Where were you planning to live with Emily? Maxwell asked, changing tack. The question seemed to catch Stephanie off guard. I have a condo in Chicago. It's small, but there's a second bedroom. And your work situation? I'm in pharmaceutical sales. My schedule is flexible. Meaning you travel frequently, Maxwell translated. Who would care for Emily during those times? I'd make arrangements, Stephanie replied defensively. Plenty of working parents manage. And what school would she attend? Emily is currently in an accelerated program at Dalton, one of the finest educational institutions in the country, with specialized instruction in mathematics, where she shows extraordinary talent. Stephanie's expression soured. There are perfectly good public schools in Chicago. None with the resources to nurture Emily's specific gifts, Maxwell countered. Her current teachers believe she could be publishing original mathematical research by high school. She can be smart anywhere, Stephanie dismissed. The point is that she should be with family. Throughout this exchange, Emily had been watching Stephanie with increasing clarity, her analytical mind processing the woman's responses, mannerisms, and priorities. Now she spoke with quiet certainty. You don't actually want me. Stephanie blinked. Of course I do, sweetie. You're my niece. No, Emily shook her head. You want something from Mr. Thornton, that's why you're here. The accuracy of Emily's assessment hung in the air like a thunderclap. Maxwell watched recognition dawn on Stephanie's face, the realization that this was no ordinary child to be manipulated or deceived. What a ridiculous thing to say, Stephanie attempted, but her indignation rang hollow. Is it money? Emily continued, her voice steady. Or something else? You keep looking at all the expensive things in this room. Stephanie's face flushed. This conversation is inappropriate. Emily, adults need to discuss these matters. I've been making adult decisions since I was 6, Emily interrupted. When Mom got sick the first time, I learned to pay bills and count change and make sure we had enough food. I took care of Mikey when he was a newborn. I kept us alive after Mom. She paused, swallowing hard. After she went to heaven, so don't tell me what's appropriate for me to understand. Maxwell moved to stand beside Emily, a physical demonstration of solidarity. "I think Emily deserves honesty, Miss Powell. Why are you really here?" Trapped by the directness of their combined scrutiny, Stephanie's facade cracked. "Fine. Yes, I expected some financial consideration would be involved. You're clearly wealthy beyond imagination, and I'm Sarah's only sister. It seemed reasonable that you might compensate me for my loss." "For your loss?" Maxwell repeated incredulously. "A sister you hadn't spoken to in 12 years? "For my niece, then," Stephanie amended hastily, "for relinquishing any custody claim." Emily's expression reflected neither surprise nor disappointment, but a sad confirmation of her assessment. "You came to sell me." The brutal simplicity of her statement hung in the air, incontestable. Stephanie flinched. I didn't mean." "I think we're done here," Maxwell stated firmly. "Mrs. Perkins will show you out." "You can't dismiss me," Stephanie protested. "I have rights. I'll go to the court, to the media." "I strongly advise against that approach," Maxwell interrupted, his voice dropping to the quiet register that had intimidated countless business adversaries. "My legal team would be fascinated to present evidence of attempted extortion to the family court, as would the Chicago Pharmaceutical Licensing Board, I imagine." Stephanie paled. "You wouldn't." "Try me," Maxwell replied simply. For a tense moment the three stood in silent confrontation. Then Stephanie gathered her purse, composure fracturing. "This isn't over." "Yes," Emily said quietly. "It is." As Mrs. Perkins escorted Stephanie from the penthouse, Maxwell turned to Emily, concern etched across his features. "I'm sorry you had to witness that. Are you all right?" Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful rather than distressed. "I knew she wasn't really my aunt. Mum would have told me." "She might be biologically related," Maxwell acknowledged, "but you're right. She was never family in any way that matters." "Do you think she'll come back, try to take me away?" Maxwell considered his answer carefully. "I don't think so. But if she does, we'll face it together. I promise you, Emily, I will never let anyone separate you from Mikey, or from me." Emily studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to evaluate not just words but intentions. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded once, decision made. "I need to check on Mikey," she said. "He gets worried when I'm gone too long." "Of course." As Emily turned to leave, she paused in the doorway. "Mr. Thornton?" "Yes?" "Thank you for fighting for me." The simple gratitude in her voice struck Maxwell to his core. "Always, Emily. That's what family does." After she left, Maxwell remained in his study, processing the confrontation. Stephanie Powell had proven exactly as his investigator had described: opportunistic, financially struggling, with no genuine interest in Emily beyond potential gain. The threat she posed wasn't entirely neutralized, but he was confident she would retreat rather than risk exposure of her true motives. The greater revelation had been Emily herself, her composure in the face of threat, her insightful assessment of Stephanie's motivations, and most significantly her clear declaration of where she considered her home and family to be: with him. With Mikey. In this improbable unit they had formed from the ashes of separate tragedies. Maxwell moved to his desk and lifted the phone, dialing James Parker. "It's time," he said when his lawyer answered. "I want to file for formal adoption. Both children." "Are you certain?" James asked. "After today's visit, we might want to let the dust settle before—" "I've never been more certain of anything," Maxwell interrupted. "These children are my family. It's time to make it official." After ending the call, Maxwell left his study to find Emily and Mikey in the living room, puzzle forgotten as Emily read aloud from one of Mikey's favorite picture books. The toddler was nestled against her side, his head on her shoulder, attention rapt as she created different voices for each character. Maxwell paused in the doorway, unwilling to interrupt the moment. 9 months ago, he had been a solitary figure in an empty penthouse, surrounded by wealth but devoid of connection. Now the space resonated with something infinitely more valuable: the quiet comfort of belonging, of shared stories and intertwined lives. Family. The one asset his billions could never have purchased, yet which had found him anyway, in the most unexpected circumstances. As if sensing his presence, Emily glanced up, offering a small but genuine smile before returning to the story. The simple acknowledgement contained everything Maxwell had never known he needed: acceptance, trust, the promise of a future shared rather than merely endured. Whatever challenges lay ahead, legal battles, school adjustments, the eventual reckoning with his son's absence, they would face them together, as a family. 1 year to the day after Maxwell had first pushed open the door of apartment 4B, the three of them stood in a Manhattan courtroom, an unlikely family awaiting formal recognition. Emily wore a new blue dress for the occasion, her blonde hair neatly braided. Mikey, now 3, fidgeted in his miniature suit, understanding only that today was important, because everyone kept telling him so. Maxwell straightened the toddler's clip-on tie for the 5th time that morning, more from nervous energy than necessity. "Almost done, buddy, just a little longer." Mikey nodded solemnly. "Then ice cream?" "Yes, then ice cream," Maxwell confirmed, smiling at the negotiation skills his grandson had developed. "The biggest sundae they make." Emily stood slightly apart, watching the interaction with quiet intensity. Though more relaxed than she had been a year ago, she still maintained an observer's perspective in emotional moments, processing rather than simply experiencing them. "Emily?" Maxwell asked gently. "Everything all right?" She nodded, then asked with characteristic directness, "What if the judge says no?" Despite countless reassurances from James that the adoption was virtually guaranteed, Emily's underlying anxiety about permanence occasionally surfaced. Maxwell knelt to her eye level, a gesture that had become natural over the months. "The judge won't say no," he answered honestly. "All the reports are positive, all the paperwork is in order, and most importantly, this arrangement is clearly what's best for both you and Mikey." "And if something goes wrong anyway?" Maxwell recognized the question's deeper meaning. Emily wasn't really asking about legal proceedings, but about the fragility of belonging, the permanence of connection. "Nothing will change how I feel about you," he assured her. "Papers or no papers, court or no court, you and Mikey are my family. Forever." The anxiety in her eyes eased slightly. "Okay." "Besides," Maxwell added with a smile, "James says Judge Morrison has 5 grandchildren herself. She's a pushover for family reunification cases." Emily's lips quirked in a small smile. "That's statistically favorable." Their conversation was interrupted by James Parker's arrival, legal briefcase in hand, expression confident. "We're up. In 10 minutes, everything looks perfect." Maxwell nodded, the strange mixture of certainty and nervousness intensifying. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals with less apprehension than he felt about today's proceeding, which would ultimately formalize what his heart already knew to be true. "Any last-minute issues?" he asked. James shook his head. "None. Stephanie Powell never filed a formal objection after our little chat about the potential consequences. The Guardian ad litem's final report was glowing. Even Ms. Dawson from Social Services has become one of our strongest advocates." Emily, ever vigilant, caught the slight hesitation in the lawyer's voice. "But," James smiled at her perceptiveness, "nothing concerning, just an unexpected development this morning. The judge requested a private meeting in chambers before the formal proceeding." "Is that normal?" Maxwell asked. "Not standard procedure, but not unheard of either. Judge Morrison sometimes likes to speak directly with the parties involved in sensitive cases. It's a good sign she's being thorough." Before Maxwell could inquire further, the courtroom clerk appeared. "Mr. Parker, Judge Morrison will see you and your clients now." They followed the clerk through a side door into the judge's chambers, a warm space lined with bookshelves and family photographs, more welcoming than the formal courtroom outside. Judge Morrison, a distinguished woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes, rose from behind her desk. "Mr. Thornton, Emily, Michael," she greeted them individually. "Thank you for meeting with me before the formal proceeding." Maxwell nodded respectfully. "Of course, Your Honor." The judge smiled at Mikey, who was staring wide-eyed at her robes. "Those are pretty impressive, aren't they, young man?" Mikey nodded solemnly. "Like a superhero." "Exactly like a superhero," Judge Morrison agreed with a warm chuckle. "Though my powers are limited to this building, unfortunately." She gestured to the seating area. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. This won't take long." Once they were seated, Emily perched on the edge of her chair, Maxwell with Mikey on his lap. Judge Morrison leaned forward, her expression kind but serious. "I wanted to speak with you privately because there's been a development in your case that requires some sensitivity." She turned her attention to Emily. "Young lady, I understand you've been through extraordinary circumstances. Your resilience is remarkable." Emily nodded, her posture tense with anticipation. "This morning," the judge continued, "my clerk received a letter that I believe you should know about before we proceed with the adoption." She lifted a sealed envelope from her desk. "It's from a Jason Thornton." Maxwell felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. "Jason," he repeated, the name catching in his throat. "My son?" Judge Morrison nodded. "He writes that he recently became aware of these proceedings through a legal notice published in the New York Times, as required by law for parental rights termination." Emily's hand found Maxwell's arm, her fingers gripping tightly in silent support. "What does he want?" Maxwell asked, voice rough with suppressed emotion. "He's not contesting the adoption," Judge Morrison clarified quickly. "In fact, he explicitly supports it. He writes that he's been living in Seattle for the past 2 years, working as a carpenter's apprentice. He expresses deep regret for his absence from Michael's life, but believes that the stability you've provided is what his son needs." Maxwell struggled to process this information. Jason was alive. Well, working with his hands as he'd always preferred, despite Maxwell's insistence on college and corporate grooming. And he knew about Mikey, knew and had chosen not to disrupt the life his son had found. "There's more." Judge Morrison continued gently. "He asks permission to send letters and perhaps someday, if all parties are willing, to meet Michael when he's older. But he's leaving that decision entirely in your hands, Mr. Thornton. He writes that he trusts your judgment now, in a way he couldn't understand when he was younger." The simple statement of trust from his long-estranged son struck Maxwell with unexpected force. He looked down at Mikey, seeing Jason's features reflected in the child's face, feeling the weight of generations and choices and second chances. "Would you like to read the letter in private?" Judge Morrison offered. Maxwell shook his head. "No. Whatever it says affects all of us." He glanced at Emily, who nodded in agreement. The judge handed him the envelope. Maxwell opened it with unsteady fingers, smoothing the single page inside. The handwriting was unmistakably Jason's, though more mature than the angry scrawl of his teenage notes. He read aloud, voice steadying as he progressed. "Dad, I don't know if I have the right to call you that anymore, but there's no other word. That fits. I recently saw a legal notice about your petition to adopt Michael, my son, and a girl named Emily Carter. I won't pretend I've been the father Michael deserves. When I left Kayla and discovered she was pregnant, I was too young, too angry, and too lost to be a parent. I told myself I'd come back when I had something to offer, but days became months, and months became years. I've been sober for 18 months now, working construction in Seattle, building things instead of tearing them down like I did with us. I'm not writing to disrupt Michael's life or to make excuses. I just wanted you to know that I'm grateful he found his way to you and that you became the father to him that I couldn't be." The legal notice mentioned Emily Carter too. I remember Kayla talking about her roommate Sarah and her little girl. It seems life has drawn a circle none of us could have imagined. If you're giving them both a home, a family, then you've changed in ways I never thought possible. Maybe we both have. I'd like to send birthday cards, maybe letters as Michael grows up. Perhaps someday, if you think it's right, we could meet. But I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. This isn't about my rights. It's about what's best for Michael and Emily. I'm sorry for everything, Dad. For leaving. For wasting years on anger. For missing Michael's early life. Most of all, I'm sorry I never gave you the chance to change, the way you're giving me now. With respect and hope, Jason. The silence that followed felt sacred somehow, a moment of recognition too profound for immediate words. Mikey, sensing the emotional shift, patted Maxwell's cheek with a small hand. "Grandpa sad?" Maxwell gathered the boy closer. "No, buddy. Grandpa's not sad. Just remembering." Emily, who had remained perfectly still during the reading, finally spoke. "He sounds like he's really sorry, and like he wants to do better." The simple assessment captured the essence of the letter perfectly, distilled through Emily's unfailing emotional clarity. "Yes," Maxwell agreed. "I think he does." He looked to Judge Morrison. "This doesn't change our petition today, but I would like to establish some form of communication with my son, for Mikey's sake, for all our sakes." The judge nodded approvingly. "I believe that would be in everyone's best interests. Family connections, when healthy and appropriate, should be preserved whenever possible." She glanced at her watch. "Now, shall we proceed with the adoption? I have a courtroom full of people waiting to witness a family becoming official." As they rose to return to the courtroom, Emily tugged gently at Maxwell's sleeve. "Mr. Thornton?" "Yes, Emily?" "After today, when you're officially my dad," she said, the word still new and careful on her tongue, "will you help me write a letter to him? To Jason?" The request, so unexpected and generous, momentarily robbed Maxwell of speech. This child, who had experienced so much loss and uncertainty, was offering connection rather than jealously guarding her place. "I would be honored," he managed finally. "But may I ask why?" Emily considered her answer with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Because everyone deserves a second chance. You gave one to me and Mikey when you could have just evicted us. Maybe Jason needs one too." Maxwell marveled at the wisdom in her young face, the compassion that hardship had somehow nurtured rather than extinguished. "You're right, Emily. Everyone deserves a second chance." The courtroom proceedings that followed passed in a blur of formal questions, sworn statements, and legal terminology. Throughout it all, Maxwell remained acutely aware of the small hands, in his Mikey sticky with smuggled candy, Emily's cool and steady. His children, in heart already and soon in law as well. Judge Morrison's final pronouncement rang clear through the courtroom. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, I hereby approve the petition for adoption. From this day forward, Emily, Sarah Carter shall be legally known as Emily Sarah Thornton, and Michael Jason Thornton shall remain under the legal guardianship of his grandfather, Maxwell Thornton, with all rights and responsibilities therein." Congratulations to the Thornton family. The small gathering of witnesses, Mrs. Perkins dabbing discreetly at her eyes, Robert looking uncharacteristically emotional, James beaming with professional satisfaction, and Zoe Kim bouncing excitedly in the front row, broke into applause. As they exited the courthouse into the bright spring sunshine, Emily looked up at the towering buildings of downtown Manhattan, her expression contemplative. "It feels different," she observed, "being a Thornton." "Different how?" Maxwell asked, curious about her perception. She considered the question with her usual precision. "Like there's a foundation under me now, something solid." The simple metaphor, drawing on Maxwell's own industry, struck him as profoundly apt. What they had built together over the past year was indeed a foundation, secure, supportive, designed to last. "Ice cream now?" Mikey inquired hopefully, bringing them back to immediate priorities. "Absolutely," Maxwell confirmed. "The celebration begins immediately." At the upscale ice cream parlor near Central Park, Mikey attacked his promised sundae with enthusiastic abandon, while Emily methodically sampled each flavor in her bowl, analyzing and comparing with scientific rigor. Maxwell watched them, these children who had transformed his life, and found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey from that first encounter in apartment 4B. He had entered that day as a businessman seeking to enforce a contract. He had emerged as something entirely different, a guardian, a protector, a grandfather, and now officially a father. The newspaper on a nearby table caught his attention, specifically an article about Westridge Development's latest project, a mixed-income housing complex in the Bronx with an attached community centre, offering childcare, job training, and educational support for low-income families. The journalist had seemed perplexed by Maxwell Thornton's apparent transformation, from ruthless developer to community advocate, searching for hidden profit motives or tax advantages. The truth was simpler and more profound than any reporter could guess. Maxwell had learned through Emily and Mikey that real value wasn't measured in property portfolios or profit margins, but in the difference you made in others' lives. That lesson had reshaped not just his family, but his entire business philosophy. Dad. Emily's voice interrupted his thoughts, the new title still sounding tentative on her lips. Can we go to the park after this? Mikey wants to see the boats. Dad. Such a simple word, yet one Maxwell had never expected to hear again after Jason's departure. Now it came from this extraordinary girl who had fought so hard for so long, who had protected Mikey when no one else could, who had calculated survival with the same precision she now applied to ice cream flavors. Of course, Maxwell replied, his voice rough with emotion. Anything you want. Emily studied him with that perceptive gaze that missed nothing. You're different too, you know, from when we first met. How so? She considered carefully. Before, you looked at everything like it was a number in a spreadsheet. Now you see people. The observation, so insightful and yet so simply stated, captured perfectly the transformation Maxwell himself had only partially recognized. He had spent decades viewing the world through the lens of assets and liabilities, profits and losses. Emily and Mikey had taught him to see the humanity behind the numbers, the stories, struggles, and potential in each life. That's because of you, he told her honestly. Both of you. You taught me what really matters. Emily accepted this with a thoughtful nod. I'm glad we found each other. Found each other, Maxwell repeated, struck by the phrase. Not glad you took us in or glad you helped us, but a recognition of mutual discovery and benefit. This remarkable child understood that transformation had flowed in both directions, that she and Mikey had rescued Maxwell just as surely as he had rescued them. As they left the ice cream parlor, Mikey riding on Maxwell's shoulders and Emily walking beside them, they formed a tableau that would have been unimaginable to any of them just 1 year earlier, a family forged not through conventional bonds, but through compassion, courage, and choice. In the park, while Mikey marveled at the miniature sailboat skimming across the pond, Emily slipped her hand into Maxwell's, a gesture of trust and affection that had once been unthinkable but now felt natural. I've been thinking, she said quietly. About what? Maxwell asked. About our story, how everything happened. And what have you concluded? Emily looked up at him, her blue eyes clear and direct. That sometimes the worst day of your life can actually be the beginning of something good. If you're brave enough to see it through. Maxwell squeezed her hand gently, humbled by her wisdom. I think you're absolutely right, Emily Thornton. She smiled at the sound of her new name, then turned her attention back to Mikey, who was calling excitedly for her to see a particularly fast boat. As she joined her brother at the pond's edge, Maxwell watched them with a heart full beyond measure. 1 year ago, he had entered a rundown apartment seeking payment of a debt. Instead, he had found something beyond price, the family he never knew he needed, the love he never believed he deserved, and a purpose greater than all his previous achievements combined. Some would call it chance, coincidence, or even fate. But Maxwell preferred Emily's perspective. It was a beginning disguised as an ending, a foundation built upon what appeared to be ruins. And from that foundation, they would continue building, day by day, moment by moment, the structure of a shared life strong enough to weather whatever storms might come, together as family.